We have not done an ER Q&A in a long time. So on today's episode, the question is coming from Instagram, from Grace, and we actually started talking about a few different things. We started talking about okay, how do you come up with a good domain name? And then we ended up focusing on how do you come up with a good business name. That's why this episode of ER Q&A, it's all about how to come up with a good African business name. Now, I know some of you guys might not be from Africa, but 90% of the audience that follows me is from Africa, and I'm mostly focused on African entrepreneurs. So that's why I've kind of geared it towards how do you come up with a good African business name. Now, here's the one thing I want to say before I even move forward and kind of contradict with myself here. You have to still come up with a business name as if you're not creating an African business. That is the tricky part here. And the reason why I'm saying this is because we've had a lot of companies in Africa, in Kenya, in South Africa, whatever it might be, when they're building their businesses, they're creating very niche local names, which is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with that, okay? French companies use French names. American companies try to, well, it's English. German companies, Chinese companies use Chinese names. Now, the one reason why I want to tell you this is kind of because of a lesson that I learned from Alibaba, from Jack Ma. So Jack Ma, when he started off his company in China, he decided to go with a name that was not native to the Chinese. They did not even know what Alibaba meant. And it was very hard for him to get business at first, but it ended up paying off in the long run because his business ended up becoming a global enterprise that still dominated China because it was a name people could recognize outside of China, and that did give him an advantage compared to a native name. And that's what I'm talking about this in specific of Africa, because Africa is a continent, it's not a country. So that means that Kenya, Nigeria, South Africa, wherever it might be in Africa, you have different niches, different cultures, different languages. Of course, within Kenya alone, we have so many different languages. Nigeria has different, Africa in general is like a country, and then within that country, you have different parts of the country which speak different languages, have different cultures. So it can get very complicated when you're trying to come up with a business name. And that's why I said in the beginning, don't just think about your country or your village. Think about the entire Africa, okay? Start from there and then think about the entire globe. And that's why the number one thing when you're coming up with a business name, make sure a person who has not stepped foot in your country, does not understand your culture, can still be able to easily pronounce the name, can easily remember the name, and it's a catchy name. If you have those three categories, you're perfectly fine. You can use Swahili names, you can use different type of names that really relate to your country. Like for example, we've been able to brand Moja. We have Sound Moja. We have different things like Hierarch Tech. Hierarch Tech is basically a name from a hill that's in Nakuru, Hierarch Hill, and we use the Hierarch part and Tech because it's a name that's very easy to say. Hierarch Tech, it's easy to spell, it's easy to remember. You don't want to use a name like Kijana Tech. Kijana Tech is a little bit hard to spell. It has I don't even know how to spell it personally, and it's hard to pronounce for some people. So that's why you don't want to use a name that's too native to the point where other people cannot pronounce it. And I gave you reasons why that's very important. Now, the next tricky part is actually finding the domain name. We live in the age of domain. Coming up with a business name is hard. Coming up with a business name that's not taken, multiply that by 1,000 times over, because we have Chinese companies that have taken Swahili names. We have German companies, French companies, American companies that have used native languages in Africa. We can go all the way down to the local tribes like Kisii in Kenya, that their names have even been taken. So this basically means, and this also shows you that global enterprises, sometimes they just take names because they sound good and they have a meaning behind it that people can be able to relate to. So what this means is when you're coming up with your business name, especially in Africa, you're going to have to find a domain that goes with it, especially when you have a domain that's .com. If you have another company that has a .net, .org, whatever it might be, please don't select that same name for your company because it's going to end up causing some legal issues later down the road, especially since domain is a form of IP. It's an intellectual property because it's a company name, and a company can sue you saying that, hey, people are confusing our brands and it's damaging us, so you have to change your name. And it's usually the first come first is kind of who gets it or who ends up becoming a bigger company is the one who can claim that kind of stuff. That's why it's important for you when you're starting a company. I know it's going to be tough. I know it's going to be hard, but please pick a name that another company has not picked. It's just going to be too much work for you to try to fight the legal part, the branding part, and customers are going to get confused. Like if you have a similar sound name with another company, people are going to get confused, okay? You want it to be almost black and white with your competitors. Google, Yahoo, Bing, Facebook, Microsoft, Apple, like they have their own brands. It's not like it's like Microsoft and then like Macrosoft as your competitor. We're going to be like, what? Microsoft, and then the same company, even if they're separate companies. So you kind of see what I'm trying to say here, okay? And then the final part when it comes to building an African business name is this, okay? You are able to register domain names as, for example, .ng, .co.ng for like Nigeria, .ke for Kenya, I believe for South Africa it's .sa, and etc. Now, the one thing you want to keep in mind, it's great for you to have those domain names. I'm not saying don't get them, but once again, you got to think global, my friend. People are used to putting .com into the internet, okay? They're used to putting in this site.com, this site.net, this site.org. Matter of fact, people don't even like typing in .net and .org, okay? It's very rare for people to get so fixated on putting that in. People like to type in .com. So for your company, you might be like, well, Steve, okay, my company is called Cool Something, and I can get a cool something.co.ke. But there's another company out there called coolsomething.com. I can still get .co.ke. Yes, you can. But let me tell you something. When you start scaling your company and branding it out there, people are going to be putting in .com first. It's very rare for people to say they want to put in .co. Even for the United States, people do not put in .us, .co.us, whatever it might be. People are accustomed to .com, and don't try to change human behavior. Flow with human behavior. That's the key thing in branding and finding your business name. You want to flow with the human behavior. Don't try to fight against it. You try to fight against it, and you've not even launched your business, and you're already having a struggle with just the business name or the domain. Think about what's come ahead when you have to start now marketing and scaling the company. You don't want to deal with those headaches right now. You want to just have a good business name and flow with it. Now, here's the other thing that I want to give you a couple of tips on when you're picking your business name, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to make sense. Yeah, I just said it. It doesn't have to make sense. I just came from telling you that, look, I'm going to contradict myself in this video a lot because this is unique. This is something that's super unique, super niche to you, and you have to be able to understand why I'm contradicting myself. The reason why I'm saying it doesn't have to have a meaning is this. You can literally take random letters, put them together, and build a business name. People are going to care about, is it easy to pronounce? Is it easy to flow? Can I remember the name? Can I type it in easily? That's what people care about. You can take random letters from the alphabet, create something that sounds awesome, and use that as your company name. And people ask you, well, what does that company name mean? Does it have a connection to this tribe? Does it have a connection to this? Like, is it French? Is it Greek? Is it Chinese? Like, why did you come up with this? Just say, like, nope, we just came up with a name. It sounds cool. And the meaning is our brand. We made the meaning for that word. And you can be able to do that. Like, for example, the first company I made was called Vizzle. Now, Vizzle is kind of hard to spell. It's Vysil. Do I have an idea what it means? I don't know. I have to ask my 10-year-old version of me what it meant. But basically, random letters put together and boom, that. Now, I remember another one was called Air. A-E-I-R instead of A-I-R. That's another company name that I came up with. So different things like that you can be able to, create out of nothing and then turn it into something. Because anyway, your business is created out of nothing. It's ideas. It's just thoughts in your head, and then you execute, and then you build something out of it, and then it becomes something that people can see and feel and understand. The same thing with your business name. It's an idea in your head. It can be random letters. It can be a tribal name. It can be your family name, it can be whatever it might be, but at the end of the day, how you execute it, how you build the business, how you market it, how you brand it, is what's going to give meaning to that company name. And that's why, to wrap this up, Grace and anyone else who out there is watching, coming up with an African business name is something that's going to be unique to you. But also you have to remember, don't make it so unique to the point where someone in a different country, let alone your next door neighbor like Kenya, Tanzania, or Kenya, Nigeria to the other side of Africa, or South Africa, or Sudan, wherever it might be. You have to remember that it has to be more than that. It has to be bigger. And I'm talking about people in the United States understanding what that. They don't have to understand what the name means. They just have to flow, nice and easy to pronounce. That's the biggest thing. And then also you have to make sure the domain name is not taken. The .com. I'm not talking about the .co, .ke, .ge, .58, 9, 10, 29. No, I'm talking about the domain name. The human behavior has been now psychologically built to put into the internet when they hear about your company. They put in .com at the end. So you want to make sure you have the right domain name. 3, don't get into any legal struggles. Don't get into a position where you're going to have legal struggles in the future. If a person has picked your name, somebody's already started branding it, don't try to steal that name and put .co.ng, okay? Just let them take that brand name. It's the same thing for you. You do not want a person to knock you off as well, okay? So always put yourself in the position of the other company if you're trying to do the same thing to them, the same way you're trying to do it to them. Wait, the same they're trying to do it to you so you can do it to them. But basically what I'm trying to say is just build a business name around something that connects with you. It doesn't always have to make sense with everybody else. And you'll end up giving meaning to it based on how you execute on the long term. That is what matters. Thank you very much for watching this video. Grace, thank you very much for asking that question. I hope I was able to answer in detail. And anybody else out there, even if you're not from Africa, if this video was able to help you, I'm glad that it did. And I'll see you in another episode. Peace to the out. Yee.